Have you ever had the terrifying feeling of reliving the exact same moment for the second time, even knowing that it should be impossible? Imagine the scene. You're talking to someone, looking around, listening to every word, and suddenly something strange happens. An intense feeling takes over your mind. You're absolutely certain you've been there before, not just in that place, but at that exact moment. The same people, the same sounds, the same movements. For a few seconds, it seems like time freezes and reality ceases to make sense. Almost everyone has experienced it at least once in their life. The phenomenon is known as déjà vu, a French expression meaning already seen, but despite being an extremely common experience, it remains one of the greatest mysteries of the human mind. And perhaps the most intriguing thing is that no one can fully explain why it happens. For decades, scientists have tried to find answers. Some believe that déjà vu is just a small glitch in the brain, a temporary error in memory processing. Others argue that it's nothing more than an illusion created by our perception. But there's a detail that makes this phenomenon much more unsettling. Many people describe the sensation as something much deeper than simple mental confusion. Have you ever experienced this? That strange feeling of knowing exactly what someone is going to say before the sentence is uttered, or the sensation of recognizing an event seconds before it happens. It's as if a part of your mind has access to information that shouldn't yet exist. And it is precisely here that the mystery begins to get even more interesting. Because there's a little-known theory that completely challenges the traditional explanation. What if déjà vu isn't a mistake? What if it's a warning? It might sound like something out of a science fiction movie or a psychological thriller full of mysteries, but some people believe these moments are small signs of something bigger, as if reality presents brief cracks, allowing information to escape from one point in time to another. Think about that for a moment. What if the line separating past, present, and future isn't as rigid as we imagine? What if, at certain moments, our consciousness could capture fragments of events that are yet to happen? Could déjà vu be a kind of temporal echo? A reflection of something our mind has already seen but that hasn't happened yet. The most curious thing is that accounts of this type exist all over the world. People describe experiences so specific and so intense that a simple explanation based on memory seems insufficient. Some claim to have recognized accidents seconds before they happened. Others say they changed important decisions after experiencing an extremely strong déjà vu. Coincidence, psychological suggestion, or are we facing something we don't yet understand? What you are about to discover may surprise you, because the more we investigate this phenomenon, the more questions arise that challenge our understanding of reality, time, and even consciousness itself. And some of these questions lead to theories that are as fascinating as they are disturbing. Stay with me until the end, because from now on we're going to delve into one of the greatest enigmas of the human experience, exploring hypotheses that could completely transform how you perceive those strange moments when it seems like the entire universe has already happened before. And while you're thinking about all this, I want to extend an invitation to you. If at any point in your life you've ever felt such a strong sense of déjà vu that you wondered what really happened, share that experience in the comments. It could have been something simple, a strange moment that never left your memory, or even a situation that made you question your own reality. One of the most fascinating things about this topic is realizing that millions of people around the world report very similar sensations, even living in completely different places, and each account adds a new piece to this enormous puzzle that we are trying to understand together. Perhaps your experience is similar to that of someone watching now. Or perhaps it brings a perspective that no one had considered before. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has resonated with you the most so far. Do you believe déjà vu is simply a quirk of the human mind, or is there something deeper happening behind these experiences? I really want to know your opinion. And if you enjoy content that explores the mysteries of consciousness, time paradoxes, reality glitches, and those questions that challenge everything we think we know, take the opportunity to leave a like. It may seem like a simple gesture, but it helps much more than people imagine. It is through this support that this video reaches more people who are also fascinated by these topics and who seek answers to questions that are rarely discussed in everyday life. And of course, if you're not already part of the community, consider subscribing to the channel, because the upcoming content will continue to explore increasingly intriguing mysteries about the mind, time, and the very nature of reality. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content, allowing these discussions to continue. Now, keep all these questions in mind, because the deeper we delve into the origin of déjà vu, the more we realize that we may be facing something far more complex than a simple brain malfunction. And the theories that emerge from this point manage to make the phenomenon even more mysterious than it already seems at first glance. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When science began to seriously investigate the phenomenon of déjà vu, researchers realized they were facing something extremely peculiar. After all, how to explain such an intense feeling of familiarity at a moment that, rationally, we know is happening for the first time? The most widely accepted answer currently involves the workings of memory. According to some studies, the brain can make small errors while processing the information it receives every second. Under certain circumstances, a present event may be mistakenly registered as an old memory, creating the feeling that it has happened before. It seems simple, but the behind-the-scenes explanation is much more interesting than it appears. The human brain processes a gigantic amount of information simultaneously. Sounds, images, movements, emotions, and thoughts are constantly being interpreted. And just a small difference in this system is enough to alter the perception of reality for a few moments. Some scientists believe that déjà vu occurs when there is a minimal delay between the circuits responsible for perception and those responsible for memory. As a result, the current experience reaches the brain with a strange sense of familiarity. It's as if the mind creates an instant copy of the present and confuses it with something it has experienced before. But there is one detail that continues to intrigue researchers around the world. If the phenomenon is merely a brain malfunction, why do so many people describe the experience as so remarkable? Why do some report a sensation almost impossible to explain, as if they were touching a hidden truth concealed behind ordinary reality? This is the part that makes it all the more fascinating, because the more science advances in trying to understand déjà vu, the more questions arise along the way. And many of them are related to how we make decisions, build memories, and interpret our own journey through life. Perhaps the impact of this phenomenon lies not only in the sensation itself, but in what it reveals about the limits of the human mind. And it is precisely at this point that accounts begin to emerge that are so strange they seem to defy traditional explanations, opening the door to some of the most unsettling revelations ever associated with déjà vu. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there comes a point where traditional explanations begin to run into difficulties. And that point arises when we observe certain accounts that seem to go beyond a simple sense of familiarity. They are stories told by ordinary people, with no connection between them, but which present surprisingly similar details. Imagine you're talking to someone and, suddenly, you're overcome by absolute certainty. Not just the feeling of having already experienced that moment, but the conviction of knowing exactly what the next sentence will be, and then it happens, word for word, exactly as you imagined seconds before. This type of account frequently appears when the subject is déjà vu. Some people describe the experience as if they were watching a scene they already knew, even knowing that it was impossible. Others claim to have perceived small events before they occurred, an object falling, a person entering through the door, or an unexpected decision being made. Of course, science points to plausible explanations for many of these cases. Our minds are experts at identifying patterns, filling in gaps, and reconstructing memories. Often we believe we predicted something when in fact our brain has simply reinterpreted the sequence of events after they have occurred. But not all accounts seem to fit so easily into that explanation. And that's precisely where the mystery intensifies. Because when someone describes an experience so specific, so detailed, and so impactful that it remains vivid for years, an inevitable question arises. Are we simply facing a perceptual error, or is there a hidden truth that we have yet to understand? Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of these cases is the impact they have on people's mindset. Many report that, after an intense déjà vu experience, they began to see their decisions differently, as if that moment had revealed something important about their own journey. As if they were invisible behind-the-scenes influences on how we perceive time, reality, and even our role within it. And the more we observe these stories, the more we realize that they point to an intriguing possibility. Perhaps déjà vu is not just a mistaken memory of the past, but something that forces us to question the very structure of the reality we believe we know. Write this down. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a theory that takes the mystery of déjà vu into a completely different territory. A hypothesis that doesn't treat this phenomenon as a memory glitch, but as something much more intriguing. What if, for a few moments, your mind were receiving information from a moment that hasn't happened yet? It seems impossible at first glance. After all, we've been taught to believe that time follows a single direction, past, present, and future. But some theories suggest that reality may be much more complex than this seemingly simple sequence. According to this view, déjà vu wouldn't be a mistake of the brain. It would be a brief contact with an event that your consciousness has already perceived in some way, even before it happens. Imagine time as a road. Most of us only see the stretch we're standing on at this very moment. But what if, occasionally, it were possible to see a few meters ahead? Not clearly or consciously, but as a fleeting impression, almost impossible to explain. A kind of temporal warning appearing for a few seconds before disappearing. It is precisely this possibility that arouses so much fascination, because it completely transforms the way we interpret these experiences. Instead of looking at déjà vu as a simple neurological phenomenon, we begin to see it as a clue, a discrete signal coming from behind the scenes of reality, a silent revelation that perhaps our perception of time is incomplete. And there's an even more curious detail. Many people report that these experiences happen precisely at times linked to important decisions, unexpected changes, or phases of personal transformation, as if there were an invisible connection between the phenomenon and certain points in the human journey. Of course, there is no scientific proof for this interpretation, but the pattern appears frequently enough to fuel countless discussions. Perhaps the real question isn't whether the future can send signals to the present. Perhaps the more important question is understanding why our minds seem to react so intensely when these moments occur. And when we begin to explore this possibility, we end up arriving at an even more disturbing idea about the very nature of time. Comment below. What if it's a warning? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this whole theory of time warning hinges on a fundamental question. What if our understanding of time has been wrong from the start? In everyday life, we perceive time as a straight line. The past is behind us, the present is happening now, and the future doesn't yet exist. This idea seems so natural that we rarely stop to question it. But some interpretations from physics and philosophy suggest something very different. What if past, present, and future aren't as separate as we imagine? What if all moments exist simultaneously, like different pages of the same book? Think about it for a moment. When you open a book, all the pages are already there. The beginning, the middle, and the end coexist, even if the character is only experiencing part of the story. Some theorists believe that our experience of time may work similarly. We perceive events sequentially, but this doesn't necessarily mean they only exist when we reach them. This is where Déjà vu takes on an even more intriguing interpretation. If all the moments of your journey are already part of a larger structure, perhaps there are situations in which your consciousness can capture fragments of another page of history, not as a clear vision of the future, but as a fleeting impression, a distant echo crossing the boundaries of perception. This possibility completely changes the mindset with which we observe these phenomena. Déjà vu ceases to seem like a simple mental confusion and begins to represent a possible connection between different points in reality, a kind of information leak between moments that, theoretically, should remain isolated. And perhaps that's why the experience often has such an impact. There's something profoundly strange about the feeling of recognizing an instant even before it's complete. As if for a few seconds you had access to the backstage of a hidden truth about how the universe works. Of course, none of this is proven, but what's most fascinating is realizing that the more we investigate the nature of time, the more questions we find without definitive answers. And some of these questions end up leading us to even more mysterious territories, where reality itself seems to present small flaws that are difficult to ignore. Write this down. Time is stranger than it seems. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a concept that emerged far beyond laboratories, scientific theories, and academic debates. A concept born from the strange experiences reported by ordinary people. We are talking about so-called reality glitches. The expression might sound like something out of a video game, but the idea behind it is simple and unsettling at the same time. A glitch is a small flaw in a system, something that shouldn't happen but does. And when this concept is applied to reality, it describes moments when the world seems to go off the rails for a few seconds. Perhaps you've heard stories like this before. People who swear they've seen the same scene happen twice in exactly the same way. A car passing by, a bird flying, a conversation taking place with the same movements and the same words, as if reality had repeated an entire scene before their very eyes. Other accounts tell of objects disappearing without explanation and reappearing days later in the same place where they had already been searched for several times. There are also stories of improbable encounters, almost impossible coincidences, and events so specific that they defy common logic. Of course, many of these situations can be explained by distraction, memory lapses, or simple coincidence. But what makes these accounts so fascinating is not just the event itself, it's the emotional impact they have. The feeling that, for a brief moment, you glimpsed something that normally remains hidden in the background of reality. And it is precisely here that Déjà vu once again takes center stage in this discussion. Because, according to some bolder interpretations, Déjà vu would be the most common glitch of all. Not a visible glitch in the outside world, but a small disruption in the way we perceive time. As if the mind were capturing information that shouldn't be available at that specific moment. Perhaps that's why these experiences provoke such a profound transformation in the mindset of those who live through them. They don't offer answers. On the contrary, they generate new questions, revelations that seem to open doors to even greater mysteries. And when we begin to connect these possible flaws in reality with the decisive moments of human life, an even more intriguing hypothesis emerges about the true purpose of Déjà vu. Comment below. Reality may hide more than we see. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if Déjà vu is truly related to some kind of warning, an inevitable question arises. A warning for what? This question leads us directly to one of the most intriguing paradoxes of this theory. Imagine that, for a few seconds, you receive a small piece of information about something that is about to happen, perhaps a conversation, a decision, or an important event. If this warning exists, it has some purpose. And that's exactly where the mystery begins. Some interpretations suggest that Déjà vu appears with greater intensity during times of change, specific points in the journey where important choices are about to be made. We are not only talking about major events, but also about seemingly simple decisions that can completely alter the course of life over time. Think about how many times a small choice has had enormous consequences. Accepting an invitation, going into a different place, meeting someone by chance, changing a plan at the last minute. Often we only realize the true impact of these decisions years later. Now imagine that, in some of these moments, the mind received a brief signal of recognition, not to clearly show the future, but to indicate that that instant holds special significance, like an invisible mark highlighting an important intersection within reality. But there's a curious paradox in all of this. If déjà vu is a warning, then do we still have the freedom to choose, or are we simply following a path that was already set from the beginning? This question accompanies virtually all theories related to time and destiny, because if the future can already be perceived in some way, it suggests that it already exists. But if it already exists, what is the true role of our choices? Perhaps the answer lies somewhere between these two extremes. Perhaps déjà vu isn't a confirmation of an inevitable destiny, but a reminder that certain moments carry a greater weight than we imagine, a kind of silent signal drawing our attention to something that would normally go unnoticed. And the more we reflect on this possibility, the closer we get to an even more unsettling question. What would happen if we consciously tried to use this phenomenon to influence our own decisions? Comment below. My choices matter. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's an interesting way to explore this mystery without having to prove any theory right or wrong. You just need to do some thought experiments. These aren't scientific tests, but exercises in imagination capable of revealing just how strange this phenomenon really can be. Imagine you're walking down any street and, suddenly, you experience an extremely intense déjà vu, unlike others. Something so strong that it triggers a feeling of alertness. You don't know exactly why, but you feel that this moment has a special meaning. At that moment you have two options: completely ignore the sensation or pay attention to it. What would you do? Now imagine that, a few seconds later, something unexpected happens. Perhaps an impulsive decision you were about to make is avoided. Perhaps you notice a detail that would normally go unnoticed. Perhaps nothing happens. But the question remains, would the simple act of paying attention have changed anything? This type of reflection leads us into fascinating territory, because, regardless of whether déjà vu is a memory glitch or something deeper, it has a real impact on how we think. It alters our mindset for a few moments. It makes us see the world differently. It makes us question our decisions and see reality from another angle. And perhaps that is the most powerful aspect of all, because sometimes an experience doesn't need to reveal a hidden truth to generate transformation. It simply needs to make us stop, reflect, and observe what we normally ignore. Many of the great changes in the human journey begin exactly like that, with an unexpected question. Perhaps that's why déjà vu continues to generate so much interest. Not because it provides definitive answers, but because it opens doors to possibilities that challenge our common understanding of time, consciousness, and reality itself. And when we begin to analyze the phenomenon from this perspective, an even more interesting explanation emerges as to why our brain may be so deeply involved in this entire experience. Write this down. There are questions that change everything. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. After exploring theories about time, reality, and possible warnings from moments yet to come, one question cannot be ignored. What if most of this mystery is happening within the human mind itself? This possibility may seem less extraordinary at first glance, but in reality it is as fascinating as any theory about time paradoxes. This is because the brain is probably the most complex system we know. Every day it interprets millions of pieces of information, filters details, creates connections, builds memories, and makes decisions without us even realizing it. And that's precisely where the mystery takes on a new dimension. Our minds are constantly searching for patterns. They were developed to find meaning in the situations around us. That's why we recognize faces quickly, identify dangers before they happen, and perceive relationships between seemingly unconnected events. This ability has been fundamental to human survival throughout history, but there is an interesting side effect to this process. Sometimes, the brain can create an extremely convincing sense of familiarity, even when we are faced with something new, not because it's trying to deceive us, but because it's searching for meaning in a gigantic amount of information arriving at the same time. The inner workings of perception are far more complex than we imagine, and perhaps that's exactly what makes déjà vu so impactful. It happens in a region where memory, emotion, expectation, and consciousness seem to meet, a point where logic and sensation clash. We know rationally that this moment is new, but we feel something completely different. This contradiction creates a unique experience, an experience capable of provoking profound questions about our mentality, our choices, and even about how we interpret reality itself. We may never discover a single definitive answer to explain all cases of déjà vu, but the more we investigate the mechanisms of the human mind, the more we realize that the true enigma may not lie solely in the phenomenon itself, but rather in what it reveals about our perception of the world. And it is precisely when all these theories seem to point in different directions that the most intriguing question of this entire journey arises. Comment below. The human mind is still a mystery. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. After exploring all these possibilities, from scientific explanations to hypotheses about temporal warnings, glitches of reality, and the mysteries of the human mind, we arrive at the most intriguing point of this entire journey. It's not an answer, it's a question that persists precisely because no theory has managed to eliminate it completely. What exactly is déjà vu? It may seem simple, but the more we try to answer, the more we realize that we are facing a phenomenon that defies easy definitions. If it is merely a memory glitch, why does it manage to provoke such an intense feeling of certainty? If it is a result of the mechanisms of perception, why do some experiences seem so profound and transformative for those who live them? And if there is something beyond that, why can't we yet clearly understand what is happening? Perhaps the most fascinating aspect lies not in the search for the answer, but in the impact the question produces. Because there are questions that act like doors, they force us to see beyond the obvious. They challenge our mindset and make us explore possibilities that we normally ignore. Déjà vu belongs precisely to this category. It appears without warning, stays for a few seconds, and disappears almost as quickly as it arrived. But it leaves behind something hard to ignore, a feeling that there is an invisible layer of reality that we still don't fully understand. An impression that the inner workings of the human experience may be far more complex than they appear. Perhaps we will never discover a hidden truth capable of explaining every detail of this phenomenon. Perhaps future scientific revelations will bring answers that we cannot even imagine today. Or perhaps the mystery itself is part of the reason why déjà vu continues to arouse so much curiosity generation after generation, because, ultimately, the question remains open. And it is precisely this absence of a definitive answer that makes everything even more fascinating. After all, when a phenomenon manages to survive between science, philosophy, and imagination without being fully explained, it invites us to look at an even bigger question about the very nature of reality. Comment below, not everything needs an answer, and perhaps that's the most interesting part of all. The greatest mysteries of life aren't always the ones we manage to solve. Sometimes, they're precisely the ones that keep us thinking long after the question was asked. If you've made it this far, it means that this journey through the paradoxes of time, the possible glitches of reality, and the mysteries of déjà vu has awakened something in you. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps reflection, or perhaps that strange feeling that there are still many things about reality that we are far from understanding. If this type of content resonates with you and you enjoy exploring topics that challenge conventional logic, consider subscribing to the channel. This way you can continue to follow new stories, theories, and reflections that take us deeper and deeper into these fascinating mysteries. If this video made you think, please leave a like. It's a simple way to show that this conversation was worthwhile and helps the content continue, reaching people who also like to question what seems impossible to explain. Before I leave, I want to suggest one last thing. Write the phrase "reality holds mysteries" in the comments. That way I'll know you've made it to the end of this journey and that you've been exploring each of these possibilities with me up to this point. And now, don't stop here. There's a video over there that perfectly complements this topic and further expands on these ideas about mind, time, and reality. Click on it and continue with me there. Perhaps the next question will be even more intriguing than this one.